Tier lists in Arknights Endfield are going to be a little bit weird because a lot of characters in Arknights Endfield rely on synergies with other characters in order to perform, right? You can't just throw a character with another character and expect it to be good, right? Because you have things like combo skills that you have to worry about, or arts inflictions, which can conflict with the entirety of whatever it is that your character wants to do, right? Like if you don't get X amount of cryo stacks on last right, you're going to get bricked. So there's a bit of context to keep in mind there, but I'll give you a rough overview of what I think the power level for the characters are in the game currently. Starting with the one that I think is the most underrated character in the game currently, and I'll explain why I think they are so underrated as well, Gilberta. I'm going to put Gilberta in S tier. Obviously, she's a limited unit, so maybe somewhat expected, but if you're someone who knows anything about the state of the beta, and you know about a lot of beta testers' opinions inside of the beta, Gilberta was considered worse than Ardelia. Now, why is that? Gilberta's susceptibility relies on her being able to cast her ultimate, right? Whereas Ardelia relies on casting her combo skill, which has no requirement whatsoever. It's just doing a final strike on the enemy into her battle skill and proccing there. Now, since then, and since the beta, Ardelia has been nerfed. She still has that, but she's lost 5% of her art susceptibility on enemy targets from her base. And then on top of that, they nerfed 2% from her C1. So Ardelia's been nerfed a little bit. Let's say Ardelia isn't strong. We'll talk about her right after this. But Gilberta naturally becomes better as a result of that. Now, there's another thing to consider for Gilberta as well. One of the things that Ardelia struggles with really heavily applying susceptibility to multiple targets on a field, right? You technically can do it if the combo skill blows up right next to multiple targets, but that is a really small AoE. And then on top of that, your battle skill would have to hit them right afterward as well. That means they need to be very, very close to each other. And the only way I've been able to realistically simulate that is ironically by having Gilberta in the team and having her use her skill to group up enemies. That way they can actually do that. Meanwhile, how does Gilberta apply her susceptibility? She applies it via her ultimate, which has a big AoE, right? So that means you have an easier time hitting other enemies. Plus, it keeps enemies nice and grouped together. So when we're against multi-wave content, such as Umbral Monument, where the last stage inside of there, at least during the beta, had 2 bosses inside of it, Gilberta's ultimate applying susceptibility to multiple enemies is very nice. Now, it's also worth mentioning that Gilberta's susceptibility is a good amount higher than Ardelia's as well at a base. I think the base of it is 30% for Gilberta, whereas the base for Ardelia is 20 right now. I want to say off the top of my head. Plus, you get the extra few percent from Gilberta's vulnerability application on the enemy. Since I'm talking about Ardelia quite a bit, I'm going to talk about her as well. She's also going to go in the S tier over here, but I want to explain this one a little bit too. So I said a lot of downsides for Ardelia, but she does have like a lot of good upsides. First of all, you get her for free, so that's insanely broke. Now, obviously, that doesn't really have too much to do with the tier list, but it is worth mentioning she's a very strong character you do get for free. The second thing that's really important with Ardelia is unlike Gilberta, who's applying nature infliction on enemies, Gilberta, or rather Ardelia, does not have that restriction whatsoever, right? So it makes her more versatile in team comps. I'll give you an example. Laevatain is a character who needs to apply heat infliction in order to have her combo skills constantly generated, right? So what that means is if you're using a character like Gilberta in that team, because she's implying the nature infliction, she's going to mess with the stack generation of Laevatain as a character, meaning you're going to get less of your skills out, meaning you need to spend more SP in order to get Laevatain stacks, meaning a slower rotation and meaning less DPS. So Ardelia is extremely good there. Ardelia has the benefit of just being arguably the most universal character in the game. Like I would liken her a lot to like Rhinne. I would liken her a lot to like Troykeeper. I'd liken her to like Austria, where she can just go in a bunch of teams and she doesn't impede them whatsoever. She'll just always be good in those. Having her combo skill not have a requirement, only having to do a final strike and no arts whatsoever needing to be applied is a huge bonus for her. And then giving susceptibility for every single element in the game, Ardelia is extremely strong. Now keep in mind too that for most of the player base inside of here, during the login rewards, you're actually going to get Ardelia's signature for free, which gives her extra arts damage taken on enemies. So you're actually gonna have a better real world performance for Ardelia as well. So I'm gonna put the two of them in S tier over here. They're kind of like, it's weird because I could see Gilberta, I mean, we're kind of like future impacting at this point. I can see Gilberta like aging better too as we get like other nature DPSs and whatnot, because we obviously don't really have one right now. And then I could also see that too if they have like vulnerability or like AoE ends up mattering more, like it kind of does in Umbral. So we'll see how that ends up aging. But both of these characters are insanely strong and great to invest in for any account currently. All right, you know what? Let's do Akekuri. So for those who don't know, Akekuri actually got nerfed since the beta. They made it so her ult requirement is actually higher than it used to be by an extra 20 energy. Previously, Akekuri's main gate was actually getting her ultimate back, and that's her main utility inside of the team. She does have some minor buffing as well. I mean, it's not as good as like other buffers and whatnot. The main reason you run her is for SP, because SP is so valuable in this game. That being said, Akekuri is still one of the best characters in the game. The reality is, we just don't have that many SP generators, and that is doubly the case when we don't have universal SP generators. Akekuri, as it stands, is the only universal SP generator. generator. Think about the other characters, right? That can generate SP. It's Pogranichnik. It's like Alesh and whatnot, right? These characters go into very specific teams. Alesh goes into solidification teams. Pog goes into physical teams. And so there is no universality for SP generators. And with SP being so important in the game and Vanguards being so overpowered, oh, Arclight's what I forgot to mention. You need electric for Arclight to perform, right? Akekuri is the only generalist SP character we have. If you're playing a character like Laevatain or some other character that can't even utilize the specific SP buffers, or you don't even have those SP buffers on your account, Akekuri is likely going to be a good pickup there. Now, with that said, Akekuri's kit kind of doesn't really do much outside of the SP. You gain a little bit of damage, right? You have the link, you have some small buffs inside of her potentials and whatnot, so that is kind of nice. I could see her falling off a cliff as we start getting more SP, because technically her kit kind of sucks, but we just don't have any other SP generators. So I think for now, she's just a strong character despite the nerfs. I'd put her in A tier just because she works as like a glue for a bunch of characters, and I would recommend anyone who's playing the game invest in her because everyone is going to have her at this point. Max out too at that. 4 stars deluxe. You know what? Let's talk about Antal as well. Antal is another character who got nerfed too. Despite that, I'm going to put him in the A tier too. Antal is a buff based character, right? His ultimate gives heat and electric amp for the team. He also applies heat and electric susceptibility as well. They nerfed his numbers pretty decently. I think they nerfed 5% off of his ultimate or something like that, but he's still a good buffer. The one problem he has though is that one, his teams have other better options. So in Laevatain's case, if you're running Antal, then you're having an insanely hard time actually generating SP, which means you're not actually going to properly go through your rotation, which is going to brick your actual run. So he has slight issues there if you're not able to fit an SP generator in there. Another example would be like the Electric team, which is another team he's running, right? If you're playing with Perlica, Arclight, Avywenna, and Gilberta, well, in that case, Antal, kind of spoil what I was going to say, Gilberta performs in that team better. So you would rather have the Gilberta there because you could apply the extra, you can apply either like corrosion or electrification from her, get more SP back from Arclight. You also get more susceptibility from Gilberta. Antal is still a really strong character, definitely strong for a 4-star character. Honestly, you're going to notice a trend that like SP just matters so much in the game with the state it's in right now that if a character ends up using SP, then it needs to be like pretty heavily justified. Or like the way you build comps, it becomes hard to like fight for roles because at least one of those slots needs to be dedicated for like SP generation. You know what? Let's do everyone's favorite waifu. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Look, the tier is green, so it's made for her. All right, the reality is Flourite just doesn't do much. Anything she can be put in a comp for, Gilberta just does better, right? Applying susceptibility, also giving the infliction. Flourite's kit just doesn't do much. I'm really surprised they didn't end up buffing her, especially because she's one of the fan favorites. Maybe, as we get nature DPSs in the future, she can like do something even remotely useful, but until then, she just doesn't have much of a role. Kind of sad to see. What does Flourite do? Stack generation. That's about it. Flourite is mainly just in teams to give stack generation and whatnot, but there's characters that give like stack generation and also do buffing capabilities like Gilberta. So what is Flourite here for? Gooning. Oh, right. True. Pog is a weird one. I'm a little bit conflicted. Pog on one hand is basically defining physical as an archetype. Pog makes physical strong, right? Physical isn't really strong without Pog. Pog is what makes physical good. Here's the problem. And we'll talk about this when we get to the limited DPSs in a bit. Technically, Pog's team comp physical is not as strong as the limited ones, right? Not as strong as Yvonne's, and it's not as strong as Laevatain. But I almost feel like putting him in S tier just because he's so strong inside of physical and he defines the archetype. And as I mentioned before, SP generation is just so insane. And I don't doubt that as we get more physical characters or more support for physical, he ends up being like a linchpin for those teams for a while as well. But that's kind of like guessing what's going to happen in the future. I feel like it's still worth putting him in S tier though. For those who don't know, Pog is a character who generates SP for his team. He can apply breach via his skill based on the vulnerability stacks you have on the enemy. He also gives his team buffs. His signature gives buffs, or if you're using, I believe, what is his non-signature? Thermite Cutter, that also gives buffs to the team. Depending on what set he equips, whether it's Frontiers or it's external Sheer Knight, if you have like his signature and whatnot, those can also give buffs to the team. And then also he has Fervent Morale, which is as he takes his ultimate, he can apply an attack buff to his teammates too. He's weird because he simultaneously gives SP, then he also gives buffs, and then he also does like good damage as well. So he's just a really, really strong character. I feel like I want to put him in S tier despite the fact that he doesn't technically perform as strong as the limited characters. I think with that caveat, I'll put him in S tier anyway. I think his kit is just like too strong, and I can see his kit easily becoming better in the future as we have more physical support. And then also he's basically like the reason physical is like a good team. You know what? Since we're on physical, let's just pump out some physical. So Chen's main role inside of a team comp is generating stagger and applying vulnerability via her combo skill which has a lower cooldown when you're at P5, that is uncoupled to SP. So that means you just get basically a free vulnerability stack. She does some extra damage inside of like stagger windows as well, so that's kind of nice. And then she helps specifically for characters like Lifeng and Depan, who end up having bonus damage to staggered enemies during the stun windows. She helps stagger the enemies so you can get to those windows as well. That being said, inside of the physical team, which is the Pog, Lifeng, Depan, Chen team, Chen is pretty replaceable. I could see her easily going away. Now, that's not to say Chen is bad. Chen is a decent character. She's still like good inside of the comp, but she herself doesn't provide anything that isn't able to be removed from the comp. You can easily just take her away if you want to and perform the comp with like something else. And I could see her like becoming worse in the future too. Like she's not doing anything to physical that physical can't do on its own. She's just like, she's good for staggering and breaking it due to her passives and whatnot. And then she's good for extra SP or extra vulnerability stack generation, which you already have a ton of. We'll do Depan next then. Ooh, I don't know if high B or low A for Depan. Probably B as well. I don't know. It's one of the two. It's either high B or low A. Depan is just limited, or not limited. he's 5-star DPS for physical teams. The problem is he just doesn't have the numbers to compete with the actual limited characters. So as a character on his own, he's not doing too much. He's not defining physical on his own, right? He's just a DPS. And on top of that, as we're going to talk about Endmin as well, Endmin can actually serve the same exact role that Depan can, except the one interesting thing about Endmin is that if you have extra SP lying around, you can consistently apply Crush instead of applying Breach if that ends up making breakpoints for you inside a speedrun. So you're able to like take down bosses faster and whatnot because Anda's combo skill is a 20-second cooldown. Endmin can have some interesting uses there. That being said, because you basically have two of the same characters that perform similar roles, the Crush being on Endmin for their skill, and then Crush being on Depan for his combo skill. They're pretty similar in like the roles they actually play out for the team comps. I feel like just having them in B is pretty acceptable. Catcher, you know what? He's physical as well. All right, Catcher goes down in dude, the 4 stars, just so diabolical. All right, Catcher, he doesn't do anything. You can apply a stack of vulnerability and he gives you some protection. He doesn't do anything. It's kind of tragic. He doesn't have buffing capabilities. He doesn't provide anything to a team. If you want to use him, yes, you can use him in physical teams for the vulnerability generation. All right, Ember, the last character in physical. So I have like a weird time rating Ember because as a character in herself, if we're talking in terms of like DPSing and whatnot, or like trying to clear as optimally as possible, sustainers like Ember technically don't do anything because you could just dodge and not die. Ember herself doesn't provide any buffs. She does okay-ish damage, and she gives 1 stack of vulnerability from her combo skill on a 20-second cooldown. So that's 6 seconds longer than Chen's combo skill. Though she does give you some stack generation. I'm not sure if she should be like a C tier character because of that. She doesn't technically do anything for the comp outside of giving you protection. She gives you a shield. She gives you a vulnerability stack. She doesn't technically do much for it. I feel like if you want to sustain her, I guess you can put her in B. You really want to sustain her for that comp instead, you can run Ember in there. I also put a B because most players probably need a sustainer in order to live. I'll put her B. But it's like, compare her and her sustain to other characters who have sustain, right? Compare it to like Antal, who's like buffing your team, who has a susceptibility and heat and electric amp. Compare it to Ardelia, who not only heals your team, but also applies universal susceptibility and corrosion. And then compare it to Gilberta, who slows, who applies vulnerability, who applies nature infliction, and also applies susceptibility in an AoE. Like the difference between these healers and supports and something like Ember is night and day. I almost feel like putting her in C, but for like more casual friendliness, I guess I'll put her in B. I missed one. Wait, I missed the go to physical. All right, Lifeng. So inside of the physical comp, Lifeng's kind of an interesting case. He's basically the DPS of this comp, and he's also like really good at applying susceptibility via his skill. So the way you actually play this comp, I have a guide on it. You can check out my Pogranichnik guide. But the way you play this comp is you have Lifeng apply the susceptibility when the enemies have no vulnerability stack on them. That helps them generate the vulnerability stack, and then you can get the combo skills and whatnot from there. He has even more vulnerability application from his ultimate, and he does really good damage. The gear he wears has bonus damage to stagger. So as we mentioned with Chen earlier, getting inside of that stagger window, Fong will get to do more damage. And actually, as like a fun side note, you're gonna funnel the finishing attack or whatever into Lifeng in this comp because he's the bonus damage to staggered enemies. As essentially like the DPS in the physical team outside of the crushing, Lifeng gets A tier. All right, really that bad? Maybe you can put her in C because she's not complete dog shit worthless tier with like Catcher. Maybe you can put her here if you wanna. If it makes you guys feel better, I can put her in C. All right, next up, let's do the limited character Laevatain. So we haven't actually seen calcs for Yvonne yet, so I'm not 100% sure if she's the best DPS in the game currently. If she's not the best DPS in the game, then she's the second best DPS in the game. She is not only good at single target contents, but when you're against multiple mobs, like you will be in Umbral Monuments, she starts to shine extremely well because she can steal the heat infliction from from any enemies that are on the field, right? So if you're applying heat infliction to the enemies on, or any enemies on the field, you just steal those, you get more stacks. As you get the more stacks, you get to chain more skills. Chaining more skills means you get to chain more ultimate. Laevatain is pretty strong. The only downside of Laevatain is her team building is pretty restricted. I mentioned earlier when I talked about Gilberta, the nature infliction, right? That means that you need heat infliction specifically for her in order to shine, right? So that means you need Wulfgard Akekuri in, well, with the state of the game currently. I don't doubt they push out a limited heat infliction character in the near future to pair with, actually no, Laevaitain's too strong. It probably wouldn't be the near future, maybe like a few months down the line. But you're gonna want to run either Wulfgard or Akekuri, otherwise you're just not gonna have the heat infliction in order to make Laevatain continue going off. Also, I've been seeing a lot of people run Laevatain without SP generation, aka Akekuri on their team. You guys are actually psychopaths. Yeah, Laevatain S tier, not really much to say. Just either strongest or second strongest DPS in the game. And since I mentioned it with Yvonne, Yvonne got revamped since the beta, so it's really hard for me to rate Yvonne. She's going to be S tier. I just don't know how S tier she's going to be. Like, we know she's going to be one of the strongest characters in the game. I just can't tell you how S tier she's going to be. I don't know if she's stronger than Laevatain. I don't know if she's slightly weaker than Laevatain. Yeah, I'm gonna put her in S tier because she's going to be S tier. She's going to be stronger than all these characters. I just can't tell you definitively how strong she's going to be. What do I want to do next? You know what? Let's do the electric team, since I talked about that not too long ago. Let's do Avywenna first. This is my favorite team to play, but we're going to take our biases aside here. Avywenna is kind of in a similar situation to what I said Endmin and Depan are, except there are no like external characters that like nerf her, I guess. She's either low A or high B in terms of how strong she is as a character. She just doesn't do the damage of the limited characters. If you look at the electric team and its numbers, it just doesn't compete with the top of the top over here, right? Or even like last Rite and whatnot, right? She's just not the strongest. Also, Avywenna has the noticeable problem that her AoE capabilities, if you're not running Gilberta, are really, really hard to deal with because you need to drag the spears through in order to actually deal damage. The way Avywenna works, you throw the spears on the ground, you keep constantly stacking spears, and you pull them back through. Another thing that's really bad about her is that if you don't have her, I believe, potential 2, the spears don't last long enough for you to be able to constantly stack them on the ground before the stun window, which is where you want to save your spears for. You want to do all those spears and pull them through during the stagger window because bosses take bonus damage. I have an explanation for it. If you look at my combat video, it was like debunking the boring combat in Endfield myth, if you guys want to see how to play the Avywenna team. Speaking of which, Perlica, I'm going to put her in the B tier as well, as I've only really seen her performing inside of the electric team. The electric team, just the 5-star deluxe team, just not being the strongest right now. Yeah, that kind of sucks to say. This is my favorite team. This kind of hurts me. This kind of hurts me. As far as Arclight goes, I actually think Arclight is kind of underrated as a character right now. I think Arclight is what makes the electric team actually work. The reason for that, here, I can actually just show you her kit. Arclight has like a few benefits going for her. Arclight has a benefit of she's constantly generating SP for your team via her skill. Whenever she procs on an enemy that has electrification, she'll consume that electrification and then generate SP, right? Then she procs her combo skill. Her combo skill also gives it. But this, as you can see right here, 3-second cooldown. So if you can constantly not only proc electrification on an enemy or consume it via her battle skill, you can constantly use this combo skill to keep generating SP. And her ultimate does the same thing. This applies electric infliction and whatnot, and you can use this to also proc her combo skill. Then combine that with Perlica and the combo skill over here, you have even more combo skills, right? Then combine that with something like Gilberta, where you can apply nature infliction and then use Perlica's skill to apply electric infliction and then get another combo on Arclight. This character just goes infinite. On top of this, Arclight actually has some okay-ish buffing capabilities. Like you get the extra electric damage to your team based on your intellect, which pairs well with the frontier set gear that you have over here, which gives you secondary attribute bonus and also has intellect on it. These ones. So our intellect goes like decently high and whatnot. I think Arclight is slightly underrated. She kind of single-handedly makes this team good because she can constantly generate SP. As I mentioned before, Vanguards are just the most broken characters in the game. The problem is, outside of this team, Arclight just doesn't go anywhere. It's like you have to play these 3 characters together or like they're not doing much, right? Arclight can't go in another team. Wulfgard, B. He technically goes with Laevatain, but Wulfgard himself doesn't actually do that much. Dude, is everyone just going B tier on this? What is this B tier copium tier list, bro? Wulfgard is only in the comp to generate heat infliction, right? The second we get another heat infliction character, this guy goes bye-bye. He doesn't do that much. He has very small buffing capabilities. Oh, let me move my camera. So right here, you can see that Scorching Fang gets passed over to allies. This gives his allies heat damage increase, though it's only 50% of what he has on himself. So you need P3 in order for him to have actual buffing capabilities. But even then, they're pretty small. All he does is he applies heat infliction for Laevatain. He can do that via his combo skill. The combustion is not particularly useful. Like, it's kind of useful for proccing her combo attack, but also at the same time, Ardelia already procs her combo attack using the corrosion, right? You already have Laevatain's combo attack proc. The combustion from his ultimate isn't really doing anything, and Wulfgard himself doesn't do the most damage. So obviously, because he goes with like the best or second best DPS in the game, Wulfgard is going to perform well, but what is Wulfgard actually contributing to this comp? Not that much. Do I keep last just to bait you guys? I put him in my team because he's hot. I mean, he's best in slot. You should be running running him, but I don't like this Flourite disrespect. There you go. Is that better? You prefer this instead? Let's do Snowshine. Snowshine goes in C tier. Snowshine suffers from very similar things to what Ember does, where all Snowshine really does is she can put, actually, if I think about it, they're literally the same exact characters. Snowshine gets a stack of infliction on their skill. They're here to like mainly debuff and whatnot, or not debuff, to protect and whatnot, right? They give you some extra survivability. Snowshine does have a little bit of a benefit that her ultimate gives you solidification, but this character just kind of sucks ass, bro. I don't have much to say. As far as the cryo team goes, she's the most replaceable unit in there by far. She's literally only here if you want the protection. And even then, she's not Biz, right? The Biz option is you're just running Gilberta there. You're just running Gilberta there. Estella kind of has a problem right now that there's not really a character in the game that really synergizes with her. So even though she's made to go into like those solidification teams, who really benefits from like doing solidification stuff? You can kind of run it with Endmin. Like you can play I've seen some funny Endmin, Estella, Alesh, insert character here, like perma-free stuff. You can do that. That's a fun team to play. You can obviously she goes with the Alesh. That's like her ideal pairing right now. You like pair with the Alesh. Maybe as there's more solidification help in the future, they're buying physical susceptibility and solidification herself, she'll or like lift or whatever, all this stuff, maybe she'll be able to help in that team somewhat, so maybe she'll become more viable. But with the team just not being the best right now, C tier. Alesh, ooh, I don't know if high C or I feel like low B. I feel like there's too many in B tier right now though. Like Alesh is not as strong as the rest of the characters in here, but also it's like disrespectful to put him in C tier. That's a hard one, bro. Alesh is a weird one for me to rate. I don't know if I want him high C or low B. You know what? For the males enjoyers, I'm gonna put him low B. But I feel like he's like a high C character. So he is a Vanguard, and so he does help with SP generation. And as I mentioned before, SP generation is just like the most important thing in this game. That being said, the RNGness on his stuff, the kind of lack of damage, well, that generally just doesn't make the cut. I feel like you should almost go C. I feel like he just needs like a little bit more support for solidification teams. If there was just like a little bit more support for like these kind of archetypes, I feel like these characters would be higher. Honestly, just for being a Vanguard, I think I'm just gonna put him in B. All right, I'm gonna put Xaihi in low A. She still has a lot of amp in her kit. They did technically nerf it. They nerfed her ultimate from the beta, but she still has amp on her skill, and they still have amp on her ultimate. So, and quite a bit at that. I think it goes all the way up to like 50%-ish total, which is her problem is that she doesn't have like another nature DPS, but she pairs with both Rite and Yvonne, and both these characters are obviously strong. So Xaihi just naturally, as a buffer for those teams, becomes strong as well. I don't have too much to say there. And then last Rite, I saved the best for last. I know you guys all love last Rite, the waifu herself. I'm going with a solid A tier honor. Kind of tragic situation for last Rite as well. They nerfed her because they wanted Yvonne to be the similar archetype where you have like the solidification DPSs or whatever, right? So they changed how Yvonne works, and now they compete for each other, so they ended up nerfing the last Rite as a result. She's still a strong character, don't get me wrong. Like obviously A tier is still really good. She just doesn't compete with the limited DPSs, and I'd argue that as far as standard banner units go, Ardelia and Pogranichnik are much more linchpin than last Rite is. That being said, she's still a strong character. Don't feel bad in building her. I think final changes, I'm probably going to move Flourite up to C, just because like Catcher is so unbelievably useless. He literally doesn't do anything. I'm just gonna show you guys Catcher's kit real quick. This guy is literally suffering from male gotcha character syndrome. Like this guy, his ult applies knockdown, and then like this shields, like his combo skill shields, and then you have to use this to apply vulnerability as well. So you're using every single character in the game has vulnerability, every single physical character. So this doesn't do anything. You're getting this to apply a singular stack of knockdown, and this doesn't do anything. This is completely useless. I think this is any last minute changes I want to make to this tier list. I'm pretty confident in this list. I think it's a pretty good list. The biggest question marks I have, and the ones I'd have to test slightly more, would be like Endmin and Japan, because Japan did get nerfed from base. I need to see how much like Chen stagger matters and like how replaceable she is a little bit more. I've tested her quite a bit with and without her in the physical team. It's actually my most played team in the beta, that and the Laevatain team. But they have changed that team slightly because they did nerf some stuff, and they also changed how Pog works a little bit. Overall, I'm pretty confident with this list. If you don't like it, if you're mad that I put your waifu like Ember down lower, but if you just like this list, I didn't ask. If you guys want to see a breakdown of the combat and how to play Endfield better as a whole, you guys can check out my debunking the Endfield combat myth somewhere over here, and you can check out like my Laevatain or Pog guide somewhere over there.